Hello, and welcome to another lesson from Level Up Mathematics. In today's lesson, we will be exploring translations on the coordinate plane. Now, before we begin, let's review what a translation means. A translation on the coordinate plane simply moves points in the plane a set distance in a set direction. A verbal description of a translation includes the words up, down, right, and left. And we can also think of a translation with its informal word of a slide. All right, let's look at example 1. Consider the triangle shown in the coordinate plane. And in part A, they want us to record the coordinates of the vertices of the triangle in the table. Now, to make this a little easier, I'm going to label these points as A, B, and C. This is called your let me write this down. This is some vocabulary we learned in a previous lesson. Our pre-image. It's the shape before we translate it. All right. So in part A, they want us to record the coordinates of each vertice. So I'm going to start with point A. And if I count from 0, 0 to get to point A, I would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. So that's negative 4. And I would have to go up 1, 2. So positive 2. All right. Point B. If I start from 0, 0, I would have to go to the left 1, 2. So that would be negative 2. And then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So positive 5. Point C. If I start at 0, 0, I would go to the right 1, 2, 3. So that's a positive 3. And I would have to go up 1, 2. So positive 2. All right, so we did part A. We recorded the coordinates of the vertices of the triangle. All right, now in part B, they want us to translate this triangle down 2 units and to the right 5. Graph the translation. So let me change colors of pen here. So I'm going to take point A, and it says to move it down 2 and right 5. So if I start at point A and I go down 2 and then right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would end up right here. And I'm going to call this point A prime because that's our new point for A. Okay, A prime. And then I'm going to do the same thing to point B. I'm going to translate point B down 2 and right 5. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll call this B prime. And then do the same thing to C. Down 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll call this C prime. And then I'm going to connect these points into a new, well, that's not very straight there, a new triangle. A prime, B prime, C prime. So you can see that this triangle translated or slid over to the right and then down 2. All right, so we did this step. Now in part C, it says record the coordinates of the vertices of the image in the table. So I'm going to take A prime, and that would be 1, 0. B prime, the coordinates of B prime, I would have to go to the right 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So positive 3, because I moved to the right, and then up 3, so positive 3 again. C prime, we would have to move to from 0, 0, we would move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0. All right. We did part C. All right, in part D, it says each X value of the pre-image. How did it move? Now, what I want to do is I want to focus on problem C, because in point on vertices C and C prime, our numbers are all positive, so it's a little bit easier to see what's happening to the X values. So my pre-image had an X value of 3. My new image had an X value of 8. So that means my X values increased by 5 units. They went from 3 to 8. All right, now let's look at what happened to the y values. Let me get another color of highlighter. I went from a y value of 2 to a y value of 0. So hopefully you can see that the y values decreased by 2 units. So the x values increased by 5 and decreased by 2. So in part E, it says, in addition to describing a translation using the words up, down, left, and right, we can use symbolic representation to describe the changes to the x and y coordinate of the vertices of the preimage. Represent the translation shown above in symbolic representation. So to do that, you draw big parentheses and then you put x, leave a space, and then y, leave a space. And you're going to tell what you did to x and y. Now, the x increased by 5, or it moved to the right 5. So that would be plus 5. The y values decreased by 2. In other words, they went down 2. So that would be y minus 2. So this is the symbolic representation of our translation. Each x value increased by 5, so plus 5, and each y value decreased by 2, therefore minus 2. All right. Example 2. The objects below represent a translation in the coordinate plane. Use the graph to answer the questions. So in this problem, our pre-image is the shape M, N, O, P. In other words, this shape was the original, and it's very important on a graph that you can identify the original shape and the new shape. Our image, this is our new shape, which is also known as the image, is M prime, N prime, O prime, P prime. And they want us to give a verbal description of the translation. So I'm just going to focus in on one of the points. It doesn't matter which one you use. I'll use N. And I want to describe what kind of slide is happening here. How am I having to move my pencil to get to N prime? So let's see how many I'm going to move to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I moved left 6. Now let's see how many I would have to move up. And that would be 1, 2, 3. So I'm moving up 3 units. Now we're going to give an algebraic description of that translation. And here's all that means. You're going to put an X, leave some space, and put a Y, leave some space. Now, because we went left 6, that means we're decreasing. So that would be a minus 6. And on the Y's, we went up. So we're increasing the Y values by 3. So our algebraic description of this translation would be X minus 6, Y plus 3. All right, next example. Determine the coordinates of the vertices for each image of triangle ABC after the following transformations were performed. Now, I think to make this a little bit easier, it might make it easier on you if you identify the coordinates of A, B, and C for your pre-image. So this is our pre-image right here. Okay, this is our original shape. So the coordinates of point A, if I start at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, would be negative 4, comma 0. B would be at negative 4, comma 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And point C are at 1, comma 0. So in our first translation, they want us to go 3 to the left and 3 down. So this would mean we're subtracting 3 from the X and we're subtracting 3 from the Y value. We're decreasing by moving left, and we're decreasing the y values by moving down. So what I'm going to do is I want to focus in, let me highlight it, on my original x value, -4. Okay, so a prime, my original x value was -4, and we're going to decrease it by 3. My original y value was 0, and we're going to decrease it by 3. So that means our new a prime would be -4 minus 3 is -7, and 0 minus 3 is -3. So the coordinates a prime would be -7, -3. Now b prime, my x coordinates of b prime is also -4, and the y coordinate is +5. So I'm going to take my -4 and decrease it by 3, and then I'm going to take my 5 and decrease it by 3. So that would be -7, comma, 5 minus 3 would be 2. So that's b prime. All right, now we're going to do the same thing to c prime. But the x coordinate of c is 1, and the y coordinate of c is 0. So I'm going to take 1 and decrease it by 3, and then I'm going to take my 0 and decrease it by 3. So that would give me -2, -3. So there's a prime, b prime, and c prime. All right. In problem B, they want us to leave the x the same and decrease the y value by 4. So a prime, I want to leave my original x value, remember, was -4. And this says to keep it the same. So I'm going to put -4, comma. Then it says to decrease the y value by 4. So my y value of point A was 0, and I want to decrease it by 4. So that would be -4, -4. For b prime, it says to take the x value and keep it the same, and then take the y value, which in point B was 5, and decrease it by 4. So this would be -4, and 5 minus 4 is +1. All right, c prime. Take my my x value, which is 1, keep it the same. Take my y value, which is 0, and decrease it by 4. So this would become 1, comma, -4. Now, what I'd like you to do is pause the video and try problems C and D on your own. When you're ready to check your answers, press play. All right, welcome back. Let's see how you did. In part C, they wanted you to take your x value and decrease it by 2, and take your y value and increase it by 1. So I'm going to have -4 minus 2, comma, 0 plus 1, and that would give me -6, comma, 1. For b prime, take your x value, decrease it by 2, take your y value, which was 5, increase it by 1, and that would give us -6, comma, +6. For c prime, take your x value, which was 1, decrease it by 2, take your y value, which is 0, and increase it by 1, and that would give us -1, +1. All right, in problem D, it wants us to take your x value and decrease it by 4, and then keep the y value the same. So that was -8, 0. For b prime, take your x value, decrease it by 4, leave your y value the same, so -8, comma, 5. For c prime, take your x value, decrease it by 4, keep the y value the same, so -3, comma, 0. All right, if you need to make any corrections, press pause. If you got all those correct, let's move on to our last example. So in example 5, it says the graph shows the translation of rectangle A, B, C, D. Use the graph to fill in the chart. So note that this is our pre-image, or our original shape, and this is our image, or our new shape, A prime, B prime, C prime, and D prime. All right, so they want us to give the coordinates of the pre-image. So point A, if I'm starting at 0, 0, I'd have to go right 1, down 1. So that'd be 1, negative 1. For B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right 5, down 1. For C, I would go right 5, but down 1, 2, 3, 4, so negative 4. And D was right 1 and down 4. Now they want us to do the same thing for the coordinates of the image. Remember, the image is your new shape. So I'm starting with A prime. If I start counting from 0, 0, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left, so negative 5. And then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So negative 5, 7. B would be negative 1, 7. C, negative 1, comma 4. And D, negative 5, comma 4. Now, this figure moved from quadrant blank to quadrant blank. So let's review quadrants real quick. Quadrants start in this corner and move counterclockwise. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So our original shape was in quadrant 4. Our new shape, or our image, is in quadrant 2. The next thing they want is a verbal description. Remember, a verbal description is up, down, left, right. Okay? So when you're asked to give a verbal description, pick any point you want. I'll just focus in on point B. And you're going to tell, how did you move your pencil to get from point B to point B prime? So it looks like we're moving to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're moving left, 6, and then we're moving up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're moving up 8. So that's said to be your verbal description. Again, your verbal description is always going to include the words right, left, up, or down. Your algebraic description just uses the numbers and the operation symbols. So put X, leave some space, then put Y, leave some space, and then close your parenthesis. So because we moved left 6, that's a decrease. So that's minus 6. And then we moved up 8, that's an increase, so plus 8. So there's your algebraic description. And that concludes today's lesson, Translations on the Coordinate Plane.